Hi, I'm Kang, and I just showed up at my new job, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I really need this job, and as sketchy as it looks, I'm willing to take it. Okay, enough stalling, I don't want to be late. Shit, I'm 5 minutes late.
Kang, we knew you'd show up.
Yeah, I was just told to come in at this time. Was that you guys who told me to do that?
Yes, we told you to come in 5 minutes ago. You're late.
I know.
Now Kang, you were brought here for a very specific task.
Is it to be a nighttime security guard?
No, it is to free us from our eternal torment. Now, pick up the paper, and play the 5 Nights at Freddy's games in that order. Do as we ask, and the glove will be your reward.
Listen, that's cool and all, but I'll be honest, I just want money.
You'll also get money.
That's all you have to say.
The Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, one of the biggest and most successful indie franchises of all time. A simple point-and-click horror game where you try to survive 5 nights in a Chuck E. Cheese-esque pizzeria with creepy animatronics. At night, the animatronics will come to life to roam around and try to kill you. A very simple game which likely helped with the game's massive success and all the YouTubers that played it. And some of the people playing these games notice little secrets hidden throughout the games hinting to some events that happen in the lore. All this success and intrigue sparked an interest in a successor, which happened 2 months later. And not only one successor, but 5, and a fuck ton of books, merch lining store shelves, and a movie that I don't think will ever come out. After all that time, with the original story seemingly being concluded after all those games and all those books, what better time is there to take a look back at this franchise? Not because I want to, but because I'm being forced. Woo! Finally back home. Now let me just look at what game I'm supposed to start with. Five Nights at Freddy's 4. My god, these kids don't know how to count. One thing you'll realize when getting into this series is how fucking confusing the timeline is. The confusion starts all the way back with Five Nights at Freddy's 2, where all the promotional art for that game said it was a grand reopening, which led many to assume that it was a sequel to FNAF 1. Turns out, it wasn't. And this game's place in the timeline is also confusing, but those spirits said that this was the first in the timeline, so I'll trust them. You start FNAF 4 playing a little minigame as a crying kid with 5 days before a big party. Unfortunately for you, you're locked in a room with a bunch of plushies in the corner of your room, and a weird-ass Golden Freddy plush that watches and talks to him. This minigame ends pretty abruptly with him collapsing on the ground and crying when he's not able to leave his room, thus beginning the first night as you wake up in this weird-ass room. Little side note, but in what house does a room have 2 doorways on each side? Especially a bedroom. It's not that big a deal, it's just a little nitpick, but I just wanted to bring it up because it doesn't make sense. Then again, you're exploring a haunted pizzeria in this game, so yeah, a lot of things don't make sense. The gameplay loop in Five Nights 4 is probably my favorite in the franchise, from a purely horror game standpoint. While the other ones still are scary, none of them were able to put me on edge quite like this one. For me, FNAF 4 is by far the scariest in the franchise. You'll be given tips for what to do on the first night, things like basic controls and how to stop the animatronics from killing you. Although it's worth mentioning that when this game first came out, these tips were absolutely nowhere to be found. So early players were forced to either just wing it and figure it out by dying constantly, or searching it up. Thankfully, it was patched and this tutorial text was added since you don't have a phone guide to act as your tutorial. The main mechanic for FNAF 4 is having to listen closely for breathing every time you approach one of the doors. If you do hear breathing, you have to close the door. If you decide to be brave and flash your light instead, well, you'll be met with this terrifying thing. Nightmare Bonnie or Nightmare Chica. Because this game takes place in a kid's nightmare, and that's why the animatronics are named that way, reality was able to be thrown out the window and these terrifying things were born. I absolutely love their Freddy Krueger-esque design, and while I do understand some of the complaints that they were trying too hard to make these animatronics scary, I don't 100% agree with them since, number 1, it's a horror game and that's the point. And number 2, the game takes place in the mind of a terrified child, so yeah, he'd probably see the animatronics he's scared of this way. In my opinion, the Nightmare animatronics are by far the scariest looking in the franchise, and also probably some of the best looking. The only other real threat you face on this night is Freddy, as his little Freddles will appear on the bed. Up to 3 can appear on your bed, but you have to be an idiot to let that happen on night 1. Once there are 3 Freddles on your bed for a short while, Nightmare Freddy will appear and end your life. But he's definitely the person I die least to in this game. In fact, I don't think I've died to Freddy once in FNAF 4. And that's basically the gist of the first night. Check the doors for Bonnie and Chica, check behind you to stop the Freddles, and you'll beat the first night easy. But before we can hop into night 2, you have to deal with Plush Trap's minigame first. Plush Trap is kind of a cool mechanic, but I'll be honest, it's pretty random. You have one chance to stop him on the X. If you run out of time, you fail. And if you get greedy and let him get too far, you get jump scared. Successfully doing it though is really satisfying, and you get to skip the first 2 hours of the next night, start straight at 3 AM. And lucky for me, I was able to skip the first 2 hours of the second night. Night 2 will be somewhat similar to night 1, with the major difference being that the animatronics are more aggressive, obviously, and that there's a chance that Foxy will attack you around 3 AM. And of course, with my luck, that's exactly what happened. So we start back at 12 AM, thanks for nothing, Plushtrap. In this game, Foxy will start by first appearing in the hallway for some reason, and then he'll appear in your closet and you'll have to deal with him there for the rest of the night. The main thing you'll have to do is hold your closet door shut until he turns into a plushie for some reason. If you take too long and he gets through all 4 of his stages and peeks his head out of your closet for long enough, he'll then dive out of your closet and murder you. But other than having to deal with Foxy, this night is still pretty easy. Night 3 is where stuff starts to get a little bit more intense, with all the animatronics out now from the get-go and fairly more aggressive. This night's difficulty truly depends on how much of an asshole Foxy wants to be. If he decides to chill in the hallway for most of the night, then this night will be just as easy as night 2 was. If he decides to become an asshole and hop into your closet immediately, this night instantly becomes harder because you have to juggle a lot more stuff. Still not the hardest though, because night 4 definitely ups the ante. While night 4 is similar to 3, everyone is so much more aggressive now. The mini Freddos will appear on your bed way faster now, Bonnie and Chica will constantly come to your door and breathe down your throat, and Foxy is just a little asshole who constantly pokes his head out the door. This is probably my favorite of the 5 nights, just because of how aggressive everyone can be, and because night 5 is completely different. On night 5, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Freddy are all gone, and are all replaced by Nightmare Fredbear, one of my favorite and most unique animatronics in this franchise. He behaves completely different from all the other animatronics. Instead of having to listen for his breathing, you'll have to listen to his footsteps and try to hear what door he's running to before running over there. If you see him standing in the hallway, you'll have to shut the door fast, because if you're too slow, he'll push you all the way back to your bed and kill you. He'll also occasionally laugh and then either spawn on your bed, where you'll hold your flashlight in his head until he disappears, or in your closet where you just close the door in his face. All that sounds simple enough, and if that's all he did, then this night really wouldn't be that hard. But the problem is Fredbear is a little trickster who constantly tries to juke you out. You'll hear his footsteps go to one door, so you go check that door, and as soon as you get up, he immediately switches sides to the next door, over and over again, like the big asshole that he is. And if that wasn't enough, he'll occasionally laugh, which makes you believe he's going to either the bed or the closet, before immediately running to one of your doors to psych you out. While it is frustrating, I fucking love it, and it's such a creative way to implement what's basically a boss battle in a game like FNAF. But once you do get the hang of it and are able to catch his tricks, then this night is fairly easy. But before we can move on, it's time for the party. Let's see how fun it is.
Was that the bite of 87? Now after night 5, you unlock a night 6, and after that, you unlock a nightmare mode. But the spirits didn't tell me to play those modes, so I'm just gonna move on to the next game, which is Sister Location.
Sister Location is the 5th in the franchise, but apparently the 2nd in the story, because like I said before, this game's timeline is fucked. Sister Location and its sequel are by far the most unique games in this franchise, having you do something new every night instead of just having the animatronics be slightly harder. FNAF 4 tested the waters with this idea, having Fredbear replace everyone on night 5, but Sister Location full out embraces it, all starting with night 1 where not much happens. Your little robot companion hand unit tells you to type your name on the keypad that's impossible to type anything on, and then he autocorrects your name to
Eggs Benedict.
Then you move on to your ship, which includes giving Ballora and Foxy controlled shock so that they go back to their stage. Then the same to Baby, 3 times. And she never goes back to her stage, but Hand Unit thinks she does. So you go back to the elevator and end your shift and watch some TV until night 2 starts. Night 2 is where things start to get a bit more interesting as you're put into your first life-threatening situation, as all the lights go out and Hand Unit tries to restore the power to the facility, leading to Baby talking to you for the first time and telling you to hide under the desk to protect yourself from all the bitty babs that are crawling through the vent on their way to your office. Here you have to protect yourself by dragging this weird-ass wall to completely cover the desk. The little asshole will try to force it open multiple times, but if you just keep pulling it towards you, you'll survive. Eventually, Hand Unit will come out and tell you that he failed to restore the power to the facility, forcing you to go to the breaker room and do it yourself. But in order to reach the breaker room, you have to go through Ballora Gallery as quietly as possible, since Ballora can hear footsteps. This sequence makes you tense as hell, especially when you hear her music in the distance slowly closing in. But it is admittedly easy since being quiet isn't very hard. That is until Hand Unit decides to shout on the top of his lungs halfway through alerting Ballora to your exact location.
It seems you are taking a long time. Please proceed as quickly and as quietly as possible.
But you make it to the breaker room where you can restore power to the facility, all while Funtime Freddy is in the background trying to hunt you down. This is probably the scariest part in this game. Just knowing that Freddy is in the same room as you and can kill you at any moment is really scary. And the fact that the power constantly goes down while you're trying to deal with Freddy, forcing you to be a bit urgent while at the same time trying to not get killed. Once you figure out the balance, it's pretty easy to keep Freddy in his place, but it's still a great sequence. And with that, our duties for Night 2 are complete, and we could go back home and enjoy our show until Night 3 starts. Night 3 starts off in fairly similar fashion to Night 2, but this time instead of crawling through Ballora Gallery, you have to crawl through Funtime Auditorium to make it to the parts and service room for repairs. Even though this section is similar to Ballora's section, it is way harder. Where Ballora can hear you but not see you, Foxy can see you but not hear you. So you have to crawl around in the pitch black darkness with your only source of light being a flash beacon to make sure that you're not about to bump into Funtime Foxy. Once you make it to the parts and service room, you're face to face with a deactivated Funtime Freddy, where you'll have to click the buttons on his face in a specific order, and if you mess up the order, he'll kill you. You get his face open and then his chest where you'll remove his power module, and then click the Bonnie Puppet's black button to deactivate him. This is one of the most frustrating parts in this game. Not the most, but one of the most. As this little asshole runs around peeking over Freddy's shoulders before hiding from you. What you're meant to do is not point your light at him or else he'll hide. But this fucker runs away as soon as he makes eye contact with any fucking source of light. If you don't shine your light at him, he'll slowly start peeking over Freddy's shoulder more and more before jump scaring you. So what you're meant to do is bait him out until he rises high enough where he'll expose his black button and then you can press it to deactivate him. By far one of the most annoying sections in this game that'll make you want to kill yourself. Thankfully, Funtime Foxy does it for you. Yep, after that section, you return to Funtime Auditorium where Funtime Foxy will jump scare you no matter what. But she doesn't kill you, for some reason, and instead you wake up in a spring lock suit while Baby talks to you. And thus starting the fourth night, which is by far the most frustrating night in this game. So much so that it had to get fucking nerfed with how hard it was. Here you have to crank a bunch of spring locks that are constantly going down due to your breath and heart rate for 3 minutes. And if that was it really wouldn't be that hard. But a bunch of mini arenas start crawling into your suit to give you a quick sucky and make the spring locks go down even faster. And if that wasn't enough, some of the mini arenas will start climbing up the sides of your suit, and if they reach the top, they'll instantly kill you. So you have to wiggle your suit to knock them off. But the problem is, the spring locks will get unfucking wound every single time you wiggle. This night is still hard even after the nerf, but nowhere near as ridiculous as it was at launch. But once those 3 minutes are finally up, you can finally sit back and relax until the final night starts. This is more of a story night and isn't really that hard. You start off in Funtime Auditorium, but Funtime Foxy is nowhere to be found, so you can just dead sprint to the parts and service room, where you'll be greeted by Baby who's pretending to be deactivated. Similar to Night 3 and fixing Funtime Freddy, here you have to click some of the buttons on Baby's face in a specific order to open a keypad. Then you have to input the code Baby tells you to input. If you're too slow or just misclick, you're jump scared by this thing, Ennard, an amalgamation of all the Funtime animatronics now trying to kill you. So you type in Baby's code quickly, and when I say quickly, I mean quickly, because if you take more than a fucking second to press the number, Ennard will end you. All to get a keycard before being led to the scooping room by Baby. And this is where the game ends, with all the animatronics on the ground and Ennard outside waiting for you to get scooped. And you do, as your skeleton and organs are replaced with Ennard's body.
Jesus Christ, next game.
Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is, in my opinion, the least scariest game in the franchise by far. But at the same time, it's the most intimidating game in the franchise because you have to deal with this many fucking animatronics. Still the most animatronics in one game to this day. And while Five Nights 2 is easy once you know what to do, it still will always be one of my favorites. You start with Night 1, obviously, which is incredibly easy. The only animatronics that are active are the toy animatronics and the puppet, who winds down so slowly in this night that you can honestly probably just forget about them. And the toy animatronics, while they can be intimidating the first time you play this game, literally all you have to do is put on your mask when Chica and Bonnie are in the vent, and put on your mask when Freddy decides to enter your room. Things pick up though on Night 2, as you have 3 more animatronics that become active. Mangle and Withered Foxy, and everybody's favorite, Balloon Boy. Balloon Boy behaves the same way as Toy Chica and Toy Bonnie, appearing in the vents forcing you to put on your mask. The only difference between him and the toy animatronics is that Balloon Boy does not fuck off and will sit in your vent for 14 decades until he decides to squirm his little ass out of that vent. And if Balloon Boy gets in your room, don't worry, he won't jump scare you, but what he will do is turn off your flashlight and have the most shit-eating grin in the universe. Fuck this child, I despise him. The next animatronic we'll usually activate on this night is Foxy. While all the other animatronics can be thwarted by just putting on your mask, that'll only piss Foxy off more. So what you have to do is constantly flash lights at him until he decides to fuck off. But on later nights, you can flash your lights on him forever, but he will never fuck off. Instead, he'll stand down the hall and stare at you for an eternity. And the final animatronic that'll be activated on this night is Mangle, who's sort of an amalgamation of all the toy animatronics and Foxy. If Mangle is in your hall, you have to flash it with your flashlight the same as Foxy. If it's ripped apart as can somehow fit in the vent, then you have to put your mask on. And if it's in your room, say goodbye to your frontal lobe.
What the fuck is this?
FNAF 2 is the first game in the franchise to feature these creepy 8-bit Atari-esque games that depict horrifying events. Where in the first one you'll play as Freddy passing around cake to 6 annoying kids, all as one sits outside the restaurant crying. That is until a mysterious purple man shows up and seemingly murders them. Next minigame we have is with Foxy running out to surprise a group of children. He does this once, he does it twice, and the third time the purple man is there again, and all the children are dead again. In the third one, you play as the puppet surrounded by 4 dead people. You give them gifts at first, and then you put the animatronic heads on them, before being attacked by Golden Freddy. And in the final minigame, you play as Freddy, following the puppet through the FNAF 2 pizzeria with a bunch of dead people around the restaurant. That is, until the purple guy shows up again.
Well, that was cheerful, so let's move on to night 3.
And then with night 3, the last 3 animatronics become active. Withered Freddy, Withered Chica, and creepiest of all, Withered Bonnie. These 3 animatronics behave similarly to the toy animatronics. The only difference is that all 3 of them appear in your office instead of the vent, and they are way more aggressive. Like literally, if one of them is in your office and you don't put your mask on in like 1 second, they'll murder you. And with everyone active, we can move on to night 4 where the real game starts. Sure, the game was hard before, but this is where shit gets real, with all the animatronics being very aggressive, Balloon Boy and Foxy being the most annoying dynamic duo in the universe, and the Marionette having the fastest music box in the world. This night stumped me for a while back when I was first playing this game, but once you know the 10-20 mode tactic, it's almost impossible for the animatronics to kill you.
I did say almost.
And then there's night 5, the final night, and it's more of the same from the 4th night, with the only major difference being that the animatronics are a bit more aggressive. But again, the 10-20 mode works like a charm here, and you should beat it no problem. Finally getting your paycheck of a whopping $100.50.
Now that's the kind of money I need. Maybe I'll get after beating these games. What's next? They want me to beat night 6 and 7 on this one for some reason.
Okay then, so night 6. Jeremy's final night before moving on to the day shift is fairly similar to night 5, but with 2 differences. For starters, the animatronics are way harder this time, and the Marionette's music box goes down like a fucking asteroid. And 2, Golden Freddy is active on this night, behaving similarly to the Withered animatronics where you need to throw your mask on if he appears in your office. And his head will also appear floating down in the hallway, and if you watch him for too long, he'll kill you. While Golden Freddy is cool, he honestly just becomes another animatronic to add on top of all the other animatronics coming for you. Especially since he behaves so similarly to the Withered animatronics, so he really doesn't add much to this night. But if you thought night 6 was hard, you haven't seen anything because 10-20 mode is pure insanity. Foxy will be in your hall all night, and as soon as you put your camera down, 9 out of 10 times, somebody will be in your room. And if they're not in your room, they're in your vent. And they take so goddamn long to fuck off that the Marionette will come out because this music box drops down faster than an atomic fucking bomb. Literally, even being perfect is not enough. This night is practically pure luck. But if somehow you do it, Fritz Schmidt will get fired.
What? Why? I don't care. Let's move on to FNAF 1. And god damn it, they want me to be Night 7 on this one too.
Five Nights at Freddy's 1, the original, the one that started it all. And while this game has aged a bit like FNAF 2, and is a bit easier compared to the rest of the franchise, I still love this game. And it's still one of my favorites and one of the creepiest in the franchise. And that one word can describe the entirety of FNAF 1, creepy. This whole game's design just gives you a sense of unease, whereas FNAF 4 went in the full-on horror direction, FNAF 1 went for a sense of uneasiness. We start with Night 1 with the phone guy giving you a basic tutorial, and the only animatronics active being Bonnie and Chica, who just appear on the right and left door. The main thing to be worried about on this night is your power, which is used up by your lights, doors, and cameras. Although you would have to be a fucking idiot to run out of power on this night, because it's literally only 2 animatronics. Night 2 is where things get a bit harder as Foxy begins to make his move. Foxy in this game is, again, the wild card and the one who changes the pace of the nights. Similar to how he was used in FNAF 2 and 4. In this game, if you don't watch his camera enough, you'll start to slowly peek out of his curtain. Well, I say slowly, he peeks out slowly on this night, but he's not so generous on later nights. Once he's fully out of his curtain, he'll make a fucking beeline for your room. And if you can close your door in time, you'll block him and you'll punch the door a few times to eat some of your power. If you don't close the door in time... And then there's Night 3, and like the phone guy states...
things start getting real tonight.
One of the reasons is because this is the most common night that Golden Freddy will decide to attack you. But the actual main reason is because Freddy will become active for the first time. Whenever you hear a deep laugh, that means Freddy has moved. And he is very difficult to see in the cameras because he uses the darkness, and all you can see are his eyes. If you see 2 white dots on one of your cameras, that means that Freddy is in that room. Freddy forces you to pay attention to where he is because he is never seen on any of your door lights. And if he's on Camp 4B, close the door to your right because if you don't, he'll sneak into your room and murder you. He'll also do that if you run out of power. But Night 3 isn't too bad, since Freddy spends most of his night dicking around in the woman's bathroom instead of trying to kill you. But that changes on Night 4. Night 4 is where it becomes a good idea to use the 420 mode tactic of closing your right door every time you flick up the camera to check on Foxy. And the same could be said about Nights 5 and 6, with 6 being considerably more difficult than 5 because of how fucking active everyone is. And then there's the infamous 420 mode, the one that started the ridiculous final night trope that every other FNAF has carried over. Just like the 1020 mode in FNAF 2, this mode is just as insane, albeit a little bit more doable. But that's not to say that it's crazy easy or anything, because similar to FNAF 2, it's practically luck-based. Freddy is gonna be on Camp 4B for the entire fucking night, so leave that door closed every time you flick that camera up. You might as well fucking cement the door to the ground. But forget every other animatronic, the main villain of this night is this asshole. Winning and losing 420 all depends on if Foxy is in a chill mood or an asshole mood. Because if he's in an asshole mood, he will constantly rush down your door and punch it multiple times just to eat some of your power. If Foxy's in a generous mood though, then this night's actually doable. And once you do it, you get fired again.
Now I'm fired again. Hopefully that's not foreshadowing anything. Let's see what the next game is. Five Nights at Freddy's 3. Yes, they don't want me to beat Night 7.
Five Nights at Freddy's 3, the game before this franchise went batshit insane. Instead of playing in a pizzeria like you do in every other game, this time you play in a horror attraction based on the pizzeria and their urban legends. With only one actual main animatronic, Springtrap. But he's brought in on Night 2, so on Night 1... yeah, there's no animatronics on Night 1. Meaning that there's no threat, so you can literally just go on your phone and wait for the night to end.
Oh, finally. Maybe things will get more interesting on Night 2. Okay, never mind.
After every night, before you move on to the next one, you're greeted by these mini-games. First playing as Freddy, then Bonnie, then Chica, then Foxy, exploring the FNAF 1 location. A shadowy Freddy appears telling you to follow him, but you can ignore him and go to the left side of the restaurant where you'll see a hint for another arcade minigame that you could do in the next night, and how you access it. The first hint being BB double click.
What the fuck does that mean?
That's really all you can do in these minigames other than following Shadow Freddy to a room where Purple Guy will rip you apart before cutting off to the next night. Where you could double click on the Balloon Boy poster, that's what BB double click meant, and enter his minigame. Collecting 7 balloons and opening the exit. But before you go through the exit, you can actually glitch through the wall and explore an extra part of the level. On every minigame, there's a section where you can clip through the wall to find a secret, and in this one, it's a weird seizure balloon. After you collect that, you can immediately go to the next minigame, Mangle's Quest, by putting in the right button combination on the arcade machine. Here you'll pick up your parts scattered around while this fat kid tries to rip you apart, then jump through another glitch where you'll find a cake. And then you actually start Night 2, where Springtrap will officially become a part of the attraction. Springtrap is the only real animatronic in FNAF 3, where he'll slowly approach your office through the main floor or by crawling through the vents at fucking lightning speed. The only way to stop him from reaching you through the vents is by blocking that specific vent he's in, and if he's on the main floor, you can lure him away using audio. The problem is that you can only use audio a certain amount of times before you get an error, and in the later nights, these errors happen more and more frequently. The only way to fix these errors is by going to your left and resetting it. And that's the gist of this night. Keep Springtrap at bay with the audio and by blocking the vent he's in, and you'll eventually win. There's also phantoms in this game, which will cause you a ventilation error, causing you to start blacking out and forcing you to reset your ventilation. The phantoms are the main challenges in this game, letting Springtrap get closer and closer as you have to deal with them and all the errors that they cause. There are 7 phantoms in this game in total, but on this night there's only 2. Phantom Balloon Boy, who'll just face fuck your camera before jumping out at you and giving you a ventilation error that you're forced to reset, and more rarely, Phantom Mangle, who will appear on one of your cameras and then create this fucking ear-splitting noise giving you an audio error. But even with those 2, this night is still fairly easy to deal with. Mango rarely makes an appearance, and Balloon Boy is just a minor nuisance, just like in FNAF 2. So all you really have to do is lure Springtrap around with the audio cues until 6 AM. On night 3, you have to collect 4 cupcakes scattered around the map to enter Chica's minigame. Give a dead kid a cake before moving on to the actual night. This night ups the ante a bit compared to night 2. With 3, everyone becomes more aggressive and your errors happen more frequently. And there are 3 more phantoms. Phantom Freddy, Phantom Chica, and Phantom Foxy. Phantom Freddy could just be seen wandering down your hall before going down and jump scaring you. And Phantom Foxy will attack a bit more rarely, waiting for you to turn left before diving at you. But probably the most rare phantom is Chica, because you have to go to a specific camera at a specific time to activate her jump scare. Overall, this night is a bit harder compared to 2, but not by much since the 3 new phantoms aren't too active, so the only people you really have to deal with is Springtrap and Phantom Balloon Boy still. Then there's night 4, which has not only 1 minigame, but 2. And while the second one is piss easy and it's just you doing a bit of parkour as Balloon Boy and then giving a kid a cake, the other one is by far the most confusing one in the game for multiple reasons. The first is because of the way you access it, by punching a fucking code into cement tiles. And the second is the minigame itself, forcing you to run through like 8 different stages that look exactly alike while parkouring from stage to stage until you can finally make it to a kid and give them a fucking cake. And just like the minigame, night 4 is where things turn into a confusing mess as all the phantoms become way more aggressive and constantly jump scare you, allowing Springtrap to get closer. And if all those phantoms weren't enough, you still have 1 more who appears for the first time on this night, the Phantom Puppet, who just appears in the hall and then stares at you for like 4 decades giving you an audio error. Springtrap is still just his normal self, just wandering around. The real enemies here are the phantoms, but once you get the hang of fixing their errors and then finding Springtrap, you can beat this night, leading you to your last night, where you can once again play 2 minigames instead of 1. The first minigame is where you play as this weird-ass Shadow Bonnie glitching through every minigame you've played, all the way to this lone child who you give another cake. And the final minigame is the Happiest Day minigame, with all the spirits lined up as the puppet gives Golden Freddy the final cake and puts him and all the other spirits at rest.
Wow, what a beautiful ending. It's too bad night 5 is pure torture.
This night is fucking insane. Sure, it's not as hard as 420 or 1020, but it's still fucking difficult as hell, with all the phantoms spam attacking you and Springtrap constantly hopping into the vents 24/7 while you get constant errors. The only way you can really beat it is by predicting where Springtrap will go and sealing off that vent. But even still, it's fucking annoying having to find his annoying bunny ass who plays hide and seek 24/7. Finally beating it is so satisfying, and if you've given cake to all the kids in the minigames, you get the good ending and give all the spirits peace. After they murdered the purple guy. And then he gets murdered again. And with that, it's time for the finale of the franchise, Pizzeria Simulator, which doesn't even sound like a FNAF game. This has the most different title in the whole franchise, which is fitting because it's the most different game in the whole franchise. Instead of being some night guard, you own your own Fazbear Pizzeria and are trying to grow it. You start off buying some crappy bucket animatronics before slowly expanding your restaurant more and more, getting better animatronics and even your own arcade machines that you can play. Like this one where you can see a reflection of a blonde child crying with Springtrap behind her, and the one where you play as the puppet with the little girl dying outside, who the puppet then goes to comfort before dying in the rain itself.
That's not fucked up at all.
And if you're wondering how this is a FNAF game and where the scary part is, well, when you finish up for the day, an animatronic can be found outside your restaurant. Starting off with Molten Freddy, and then onto Afton Trap, Scrap Baby, and then finally Lefty for a whopping $5,000. Too bad, I guy took him and got none of the money. In these sections, you have the option to either salvage the animatronics and get money, or throw them and leave them out in the back alley. But the list tells me to salvage all of them, so I'll just do that. Choosing to salvage them forces you to play a little mini-game where you have to observe the animatronics as noises are played to see if they make any movements. If they do, you can shock them and set them back to their neutral position. If you let them move too much, then they'll murder you and you won't get any money. After you salvage them is when the actual game starts, as you have to order a bunch of items, print out a bunch of paper, and do some maintenance work, all while all the animatronics you salvaged are trying to kill you. These sections are fucking amazing and are so tense, having to try to lure the animatronics away from you while trying to not make too much noise yourself or else they'll find you. And to reduce the amount of noise you're making, you can turn off your computer and fan, but turning your fan off causes your room temperature to increase, which will get you killed if it goes too high. Finding the right moments to order all the items while at the same time trying to keep track of everyone and lure them away from you while trying to stop yourself from getting a heat stroke is such a difficult balance, but it's so much fun. And the nights get harder and harder as you bring more and more animatronics, culminating with all of them in the restaurant trying to kill you in an insanely difficult final night. It's so fucking hard having to deal with all 4 animatronics listening and trying to kill you. But once you complete your last shift, the game ends with Henry Emily giving an awesome final speech and then lighting the pizzeria on fire with you and all the animatronics inside, finally ending them once and for all.
Finally. Maybe I'll get my paycheck now. Odor? Yeah, that's fair.